He's forbidden. She's intoxicating. Every look, every breath between them drips with desire they shouldn't feel. 7 days, 7 parts, one obsession that will consume them. And you?
Arya. I spent most of my 22nd birthday pretending not to look for him. Every time the front door opened, my attention flicked toward it before I could stop myself. I smiled through conversations I wasn't listening to, laughed at jokes I barely heard, and thanked people for gifts I hadn't opened yet, because the only thing I was waiting for hadn't arrived. Kent O'Brien was late. That alone made my chest feel tight in a way I didn't want to name. I told myself it didn't matter, that he was just my father's best friend, that he'd probably stop by later, drop off something practical and boring, ruffle my hair like he used to, and remind me I was growing up too fast. Still, I kept checking the clock. When he finally walked in, the room shifted for me. Not for anyone else, just me. He didn't make an entrance. He never did. He slipped into the house like he belonged there, tall and calm, scanning the room the way he always had, like he was counting heads, like he was making sure everything was fine. I watched him greet my father first. Of course he did. They clasped hands, shared a laugh, the kind that came from years of history I wasn't part of. I waited. I wanted him to look at me. He didn't at first. I busied myself at the gift table, pretending to rearrange ribbons while watching him from the corner of my eye. When he finally noticed me, his expression softened into something familiar and warm. Relief hit me before I could stop it. "Happy birthday," he said, stepping closer. His voice was steady, easy. I tilted my head, trying not to sound too eager. "That's it?" He raised a brow. "What, you want a speech?" I smiled, but there was something buzzing under my skin now. "I thought maybe you'd have a gift." His lips twitched. "You always were impatient." I crossed my arms. "You used to never forget." That did something, not enough to change his expression, but enough to make him pause. "Didn't forget," he said after a moment. "Just didn't bring it in yet." My heart skipped. "So there is one." "Don't get excited," he warned. "It's nothing special." I didn't care. It wasn't about the gift. It was about the fact that I wanted something from him at all.
Kent. I almost skipped the party. Not because I didn't want to be there, but because birthdays had a way of reminding me how fast time moved, and Arya turning 22 felt significant in a way I couldn't quite place. When I arrived, the house was already full. Her father spotted me immediately, pulled me into conversation, joked about getting older like we always did. Normal. That was good. Then I saw her. She stood near the gift table, pretending to organize something that didn't need organizing. I noticed the way she glanced in my direction before quickly looking away. Probably waiting to be polite, I thought. She'd always been considerate like that. I approached her when there was an opening, keeping things light, familiar. "Happy birthday," I told her. She tilted her head, eyes sharp in a way that caught me off guard. "That's it?" I almost laughed. "Someone's demanding today." She asked about a gift. I told her not to get excited. Truth was, I'd brought something simple. A necklace I'd seen weeks ago and bought without thinking too much about it. Something tasteful, appropriate. I'd planned to give it to her quietly, not make a show of it. She hadn't changed, at least that's what I told myself. But there was something different in the way she watched me now. Not innocent, not childish, just curious. I brushed it off. People grow up. That didn't mean anything had to change. I still saw her as the kid who used to sit on the counter and talk my ear off while I fixed things around the house. The girl who trusted me without question. And I intended to keep it that way, even if for the first time. I felt a strange awareness that she wasn't a child anymore. Chapter 2. Kent. The party ended the way most of them did, slowly, with half-empty glasses and the quiet hum of exhaustion settling into the walls. Arya had disappeared upstairs an hour ago. I'd noticed even though I pretended not to. Her laughter had faded, her presence slipping out of the room without ceremony. She was probably asleep by now. She always had been the type to retreat early when things grew too loud. Her father and I stayed behind. We sat at the kitchen table. The same one I'd repaired years ago when one of the legs snapped under too much weight. A bottle of whiskey sat between us, opened but barely touched. The lights were dimmer now, the house finally breathing again. "She's grown," her father said suddenly, staring into his glass. I nodded because there was nothing else to say. "Feels like yesterday she was running around this place barefoot." he continued, shaking his head. Now look at her, 22, smart, beautiful. There was pride in his voice. And something else, fear maybe. The kind parents don't like admitting. She's going to start having boyfriends, he went on, a little too casually. If she hasn't already. I stiffened, not visibly, but internally. This wasn't a road I wanted to walk down. That's normal, I said evenly. She's an adult, he exhaled. Yeah, still, she hasn't, you know. She's always been careful. I looked at him then, really looked at him. And why exactly are you telling me this? I asked. He hesitated, like he'd just realized he'd crossed into territory he hadn't mapped out. I don't know, he admitted. You've just always been there. You helped raise her. I trust you. Trust. That word landed heavier than it should have. Her personal life isn't my concern, I said firmly. And it shouldn't be yours in that way anymore either. He nodded quickly, embarrassed now. You're right. You're right. He waved a hand. That was too much. Silence settled between us. Then he looked at me again, more serious this time. If anything ever happens to me, he said quietly, I want you to look out for her. My grip tightened around my glass. She'll need someone, he continued. Someone steady. Someone she already trusts. I didn't answer right away. Because something about the way he said it, so final, so certain, made my chest feel tight. I've always looked out for her, I said carefully. I know, he replied. That's why I'm asking. He smiled then, tired but sincere. Thank you for being in her life. I don't say it enough. I nodded because words felt dangerous. When I left that night, the house was quiet. Too quiet. As I stood by the front door, I glanced up the staircase without meaning to. Her door was closed. Light off, asleep, safe. That should have been enough. But something about the conversation unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. A strange weight settled into my chest, responsibility mixed with something I didn't want to name. I told myself it was nothing. Just loyalty, just habit.
Arya, I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come with me. The house was quieter than it had been all night, the laughter and music replaced by the low hum of something settling back into place. I lay on my side, staring at the wall, listening to the familiar sounds of my childhood home breathing around me. I knew my father was still downstairs with Kent. I hadn't heard their voices. Not really. Not enough to catch words. Not enough to eavesdrop. Just the faint awareness that they were there, talking, existing in the same space, together. That thought alone was enough to keep me awake. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling, my mind drifting back to earlier in the night, to the way Kent had said happy birthday like it was just another sentence, to the way he'd told me not to get excited about my gift. The gift, he hadn't given it to me yet. That shouldn't have mattered. I had more presents than I knew what to do with. Bags and boxes lined my room unopened, waiting for a moment I didn't feel ready for. But his gift felt different. It wasn't about what it was. It was about the fact that he'd thought of me. That somewhere in his busy, ordered life, I'd crossed his mind long enough for him to stop and choose something. I wondered what it could be. Something practical, probably. Something safe. Something that still fit into the version of me he carried in his head. The thought made my chest tighten. I slipped out of bed and padded quietly into the bathroom, closing the door behind me. The light flicked on, bright and unforgiving. I stood in front of the mirror, studying my reflection like I was seeing myself for the first time. I wasn't a baby. I turned slightly, examining the curve of my waist, the slope of my hips, the fullness of my chest beneath the thin fabric of my sleep shirt. My body had changed over the years, soft where it used to be sharp, confident where it used to be awkward. Boys at college noticed. They always had. I thought of the looks I got when I walked across campus. The flirtation, the invitations, the way attention came easily, almost effortlessly. So what was wrong with Kent? The question slipped into my mind before I could stop it, sharp and unwelcome. He barely noticed me. Or worse, he noticed me and chose not to see. I frowned at my reflection, chewing on the inside of my cheek. Maybe he just wasn't interested in women like me. Maybe he wasn't interested in women at all. The thought startled me enough to laugh quietly. No, that was stupid. I would have known. Kent wasn't distant with women. Because he didn't want them. He was distant because that was who he was. Controlled, careful, always, keeping something held back. Still, the doubt lingered. I dropped back onto my bed, pulling the covers up around me like armor. My mind replayed moments from the party. the way he stood apart from the crowd, the way he spoke to me like time hadn't touched us at all. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I was frozen in his memory, forever younger, forever untouchable, forever someone else's responsibility. I hugged a pillow to my chest and stared into the darkness, the weight of that realization settling over me. It was just a crush, I reminded myself. A harmless one, the kind you grow out of. He would never look at me like that. And maybe that was exactly why I couldn't stop wanting him to. I turned onto my side, then onto my back again. Sleep hovered just out of reach, teasing and elusive. My thoughts looped endlessly, circling him, the gift, the distance, the quiet way he took up space in my life without ever stepping too close. By the time sleep finally found me, it was restless and light, full of half-formed dreams and unanswered questions. And somewhere deep down, a quiet certainty settled in. This wasn't going to be easy to forget.
Chapter 3. Kent. I hadn't planned to stay long. That was the lie I told myself as I pulled up outside. Steve's house the next morning, engine still running. The small box heavy in my jacket pocket. I told myself I was just dropping something off, fulfilling an obligation I'd delayed too long. Her father had already left for work. His car was gone, driveway empty. The house quiet in that early morning way that felt too intimate for comfort. I hesitated before getting out. This wasn't my house. It never had been. I had my own place, my own routine, my own carefully ordered life. But some habits die hard, and showing up for Arya had always been one of mine. I knocked once. Then again. The door opened almost immediately. Arya stood there already dressed for school, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair still slightly damp like she'd rushed through her morning. She looked surprised to see me, and something else flickered across her face that made my chest tighten before I could stop it. "Uncle Kent," she said. There it was, the title I'd worn for years without thinking. "Morning," I said. "I won't keep you, just wanted to give you something." Her eyes dropped to my hands. "The box." "Oh," she said softly, stepping back to let me in. "You came all this way just for that?" I followed her into the living room, aware of how close we suddenly were in the quiet house. Didn't want to forget again. She smiled like she didn't believe me, like she knew I wouldn't. I pulled the box from my pocket and handed it to her. She took it carefully, like it might disappear if she moved too fast. She opened it slowly. The way her breath caught told me I'd chosen right. Or maybe that I shouldn't have chosen at all. "It's beautiful," she said. "Really? I thought it suited you," I replied before I could stop myself. She looked up at me then, eyes searching my face. And for a second I felt exposed in a way I hadn't expected. "Will you help me put it on?" she asked. The question landed heavier than it should have. I nodded once. She turned, lifting her hair away from her neck. My fingers brushed the clasp, close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. I kept my movements quick, precise, professional. Even, like that could keep the moment from becoming something else. "There," I said, stepping back. She touched the necklace, smiling to herself. "Thank you, Kent." I stiffened. "It's Uncle Kent," I corrected automatically. She turned to face me, chin lifted, eyes steady. "I don't want to call you that anymore." I frowned. "Arya." "I'm 22, she said calmly. "I'm grown. I've earned the right to call you by your name." The words shouldn't have unsettled me, but they did. "Get your bag," I said too quickly. "I'll drop you off."
Arya. The drive felt different from the start. He was quieter than usual, hands firm on the wheel, gaze fixed straight ahead. I watched him from the passenger seat, the necklace cool against my skin, grounding me in the fact that this morning was real. "You didn't have to drive me," I said. "I know," he replied. That answer again. I shifted in my seat. "You know, most people would ask by now." "Ask what?" "If I have a boyfriend." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're 22, he said. "You don't need my approval." That's not what I asked. Silence stretched between us. I waited. He glanced at me once, brief, unreadable, then back to the road. I smiled slightly, then pushed further. "Do you have one? A girlfriend? That's not your concern." I tilted my head. "But whether I have a boyfriend is?" He didn't answer, so I kept going. "You don't really date, do you?" I said. "I mean, I've never seen any women around you." "Do you just—" I hesitated, then said it anyway. "Do one-night stands?" He finally looked at me then. Really looked. His expression sharp. controlled, almost warning. That's enough. I crossed my arms, irritation flaring. You can ask about my life, but I can't ask about yours? I didn't ask, he said evenly. And I won't. That stung more than I expected. So it's none of your business if I have a boyfriend, I said, voice tight. And it's none of yours who I spend my time with, he replied. The hypocrisy burned, because we both knew something else. He would have known. If I had a boyfriend, Kent would have noticed. He always noticed things he pretended not to care about. I turned toward the window, annoyed now, hurt in a way I didn't want to admit. When the car slowed near campus, neither of us spoke. He pulled over. Have a good day, he said. I opened the door, then paused. You know, I said quietly, you barely see me at all. He didn't respond. I stepped out, the door closing with a soft finality behind me. And as I walked away, I could feel his eyes on me. Not following, not reaching, just there, watching.